We're at a really weird point in history. Empires rise and fall, sure, and who knows what the future holds with the shifts in power that we can see going on in the world today, but that's not why I've come to this conclusion. Welcome to Out of My Head, my new podcast where I discuss, well, whatever comes to me. This week, I'm feeling the ignorance and culture we're experiencing as a nation here in the US right now. You see, culture has always been a bit of a one-sided endeavor throughout its existence. Those who were in the public eye said what was right and what was wrong, and those at home would read or later listen or later watch and simply be told. There was no debate, no fact-checking, and certainly no way to do the research for yourself without going into the field. So when I say that we're at a really weird point in history, what I mean is that for the first time, anyone who's willing to can go back to check and see if what they're being told by the newspaper, or radio, or television is really worth listening to. You're capable of looking into any current event you like, and can see it from any side you'd like to see it from. The days of being told who to hate, who to admire, what to wear, and where to shop are over. Even now, the fact you're listening to this instead of the radio or some other form of media is an option that the internet has presented you and I with. A form of connection that lets you interact with me in the form of comments. A place for a conversation and the sharing of ideas. It took a while to catch on. The internet was in its infancy, and only the people most ahead of the curve could see what was happening. But these days, almost everyone is online at all times in some form or another. Some people behave differently online than they do in person. Other people have entire online personas that don't reflect their physical selves at all. Note that I say physical selves and not real selves. There's a distinction that needs to be made there, you see. Which you is more genuine? The version of yourself that can say what's on your mind freely with no danger of being harmed physically? The you that can hide behind a mask of anonymity and express your truest opinions and desires without fear of being shunned? Or the you that has to smile for the awful people at your job or school? The you that has to let the customer know they're always right no matter how wrong they are? When I phrase it like that, the answer is really pretty obvious. Humans are much more free to be themselves and speak honestly when they're in a situation where speaking their mind isn't going to bring them harm. This is the reason you're secretly looking up those pictures or talking to that group of people you know or whatever it is you do online that society would love to harass you over. There's a certain sense of security that comes with knowing no matter what niche your interests fall into, you're going to find other people who not only will not judge you, but will actually also be interested in the same things you are. I'm sure you're aware of it on some level, though maybe you've never actually thought it in these exact words, but society as a whole makes people feel far more isolated than it makes them feel connected. I don't mean the visit you make to the mall with your friends, because your friends aren't society. Nobody you know is society. Society is this sort of imaginary them that we separate from everyone we know. Still, we're left with this persistent feeling that somewhere out there, a majority of people must exist that are normal, and that would be pretty bothered by all the little secret flaws and quirks that make each of us unique. Everyone feels this on some level, I believe. We all, at some point in our lives, realize that we aren't normal. We aren't like everyone else, and we never have been. At this point, most people decide that the strange parts of themselves should be locked away and reserved only for those we trust most. We pack up most of what we are, and try to tuck ourselves neatly into a box that we've all agreed to call normal. Other people can't stand the idea of limiting who they are just to fit in, and they go out and find some tiny niche of their own that suits them more. They might get tattoos, or start smoking, or go into the mountains and never be heard from again. Neither answer is particularly wrong because you can't be yourself incorrectly. That being said, the internet is doing a wonderful job of making people realize that all along, even with their quirks and oddness, everyone has actually been quite normal. This has had a pretty alarming effect on the people who don't want to accept that they're normal, as they become increasingly more obsessed with labels to define themselves as outside of what most people are. I'm sure you've noticed a whole movement of people has sprung up in the past several years that are just obsessed with the idea that they aren't normal. They're different, and they would love to show you why. These people, however, are still normal. Their quirk is a desire to be different. You see, most people either want to be normal and fear they are different than everyone else, or they want to be different and fear they are just like everyone else. Almost everyone falls into one of those two categories. Let me resolve that fear for you. You are different, and that is completely normal. The internet is wonderful in helping you realize this. Go on and look up anything you want right now. Go and look up literally whatever comes into your mind that you might enjoy doing. Don't even be general about it. I'll give you a random example. Nose picking. I'm willing to bet that somewhere out there, not only is there a community of nose pickers with a forum about how they quite enjoy digging dust and mucus out of their noses, but that there's probably some obscure pornography of it. I'm not fact-checking that, simply making a point. You see, the people in culture right now who are most obsessed with being different appear, at least from my perspective, to be the people most obsessed with trying to get everyone to accept their way of doing things as the only correct way. The people who want you to accept them for their choices have become the people judging you for yours. If you're not part of some kind of minority, you're somehow offensive to the people who are simply by existing. MTV's Dear White Guys video is a perfect culmination of this hate speech coming to a head. Can you imagine the outcry if it had been Dear Black Women instead? The absolute rage we'd have seen? Why is it okay when it's done to one group and not another? How is that not exactly what systematic oppression is? I'm not trying to convince you of anything, though. I just enjoy pointing out how absolutely weird society's gotten. That using the wrong pronouns for someone is now an actual crime in Canada. That people are calling misgendering someone an act of violence. As an example of how much of a wrong turn we've taken, I recently saw a protester defecating, literally crapping, outside on a sidewalk corner, supposedly in protest of our new president. While I'm not interested in politics, I will say that they're not really a suitable excuse for behaving like an animal. Not that you need an excuse to behave in any certain way, but if you're trying to justify your actions with an excuse, you're not really being true to yourself. Sincerity makes no excuses. Our differences as a species are something to be celebrated, and the fact that we live in an era of history where the best thing about humanity, our expression of who we are as individuals, is being turned into a weapon to make us hate each other is just sad. Why not go somewhere and read up on why the group of people you dislike the most feels the way they do? Not from a site that already shares your opinions, but from one of their own sites. You might find that the similarities are much bigger than the differences. Everyone can always at least agree that we should all treat each other how we want to be treated, right?